Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Three Men and a Book, the podcast about all things reading and parenting fails. So this evening's guest, we've got Benji Davies, author and illustrator of Grandma Bird, The Grotlin, Busy Bear, Pizza Time, Granddad's Island, The Stormwell, and of course the Tremendous Tad, which went into our subscriptions a few months ago. So Benji, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello, thank you.
Hi, Benji.
We always kick off sort of the podcast with if you can just tell us a little bit more about yourself, maybe your family, and how you got into sort of creating children's books.
So I started. I was an animation director, and I was doing a bit of illustration at the same time, and then so I was doing that for quite a few years, and then eventually got into doing more of my own stuff, writing my own stuff. And kind of built it up around that really, and so then I illustrate books for other authors, but mostly now I illustrate my own picture books that I write, and then I do a bit of do some novelty books. I think you mentioned Busy Bear, but I've written and illustrated about, I think it's 7 now, 7 books, and I live in East London. I've got a studio here in Walthamstow. And I live here with my wife Nina and my daughter Esther, who is 3.5.
Oh wow! So you're busy.
Yeah.
Feel your pain.
Similar age to us. Because how old's Ava, Mark? She's
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah, and Alfie's 5.5 months.
Right.
So living the dream at the moment, Benji. Living the dream.
That's definitely the reason why Mark's got a beer in his hand.
That's why I've always got one of these handy at the evening podcast. Chill time. Yeah.
I did consider the beer, but I went for the tea.
Did you?
I'm off kilter. Sorry.
There's always time to pause it and go and get one. I just it makes the evening go quite smoothly for me. I quite like a little come down beer after the madness of the day. Or 10.
Have you done bedtime? That's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. That's done. Yeah,
right.
Bedtime is done. Stories have been read. Tears have been shed. And now we're drinking.
That's it.
Why not? It's a Wednesday.
I don't know did you find that when the clocks changed, or when they changed, you find it's a nightmare? Because we find that like, Esther's now just like the week that the clocks changed, and then that she just wouldn't go to bed. She wanted to go an hour later. And now she just won't get out of that pattern. And I think it's, she looks outside and she goes, but it's not nighttime. Why am I going to?
I've had that with my daughter. She's like, but it's still daylight.
Yeah. And I think I don't know, how's your daughter? Mine's, so with Esther being 3, she's kind of like a year ago, she didn't notice. She didn't have a clue.
That's the stage I'm at. Dougie's 2, and therefore the clock's changing make no difference. Could set up blackout blinds anyway and try and keep the routine up. It's more on me remembering, because it's lighter out, I get to do more things. Therefore you think, oh, it's not like mental indicator, you've got to keep a better eye on the time.
Right.
And not suddenly feed them chocolate or play with a new toy too late and you go, oh, it's not dark yet. Oh, that doesn't happen in the summer, does it? Trash.
I try and fool my daughter, so I just race upstairs. The blinds are closed, curtains are drawn. I'm like, no, it is nighttime. You just got to go up the stairs, and it is dark.
Tint the windows.
But
it's interesting actually, because Ava's the same. She said, well, it's not, it's not dark. It can't be nighttime. So we've tried to introduce the clock and saying, this is the time you go to bed, and when the small hand is on 7 and the big hand's on 1/4 whatever, that is launch pad, half an hour for beer time. So that's when you go to bed. But then by the time you've read 3 or 4 stories, and some of the stories we read are quite energetic, and then she's like, no, I'm just not interested in going to bed now. So we'll hear her on the monitor just talking and singing for about half an hour, and you think, no wonder you wake up at 6 a.m. shattered, because you haven't slept until 9 o'clock at night. But it's difficult. It is really tough, but actually it's quite nice, because it's actually, I personally feel a bit more energetic when I get home from work and it's light outside. And the problem is I'm quite guilty of coming home and hyping her up and actually playing with her and doing stuff. And then my wife's constantly on me saying, you know, no wonder she's not going to bed at 7 because she's wide awake. But yeah, it's tough. It is tough, especially all the lockdown stuff. And, you know, as I'm sure, you know, if you're around London, it's even harder than maybe it has been here. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of weird. I think it's like that in any city. I suppose it feels odd sort of living in the city, but not being able to really use the city. It's been quite strange.
Yeah.
And all absolutely. The things that we would have done with her over the past year, you know, she is at that sort of stage where she will engage with stuff now much more and sort of more aware of what she's doing. So it's a shame, you know, like the benefits of living in a big city. Sort of we haven't really had them. But then at the same time, we're quite lucky because we're right on the edge of London. Then we've got Epping Forest. So then we've used that more. So there's a kind of flip side to it, I think.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. Yeah, it has been an interesting year. But I think, you know, the lockdown situation, not going to go out as much. We've read a lot more books and we've done a lot more things around the house, and fortunate enough that she's got, you know, some nice kit in the garden to play with. And it's just, it's been a weird year, but you almost feel like they've been robbed of a year of doing everything. Definitely. But yeah, it is what it is. We're all in it together, aren't we? So
yeah, and the family aspect as well, just not being able to see, you know, sort of any not as much family, you know, all that stuff.
Tricky. You know what? The one of the biggest things for me was a little while ago, a parents' evening. My daughter's 4, nearly 5 now, so I had a parents' evening with her teacher, and they were talking about writing stories, and they had to do the bit where they innovate the stories that create, you know, make it their own, and they're all writing about going to Asda or the supermarket or something. And then I suddenly thought, wow, actually, if you think about it, what they go out and do or where they go at the moment, you know, it's a big trip to the supermarket, which is really sad, really.
Yeah, actually, Esther, so she started doing, I don't know whether this is like a normal development thing or whether it's just her, but she started doing quite a lot of play acting of other people, like people we know or family or friends, and saying, I'm going to be so-and-so, and you're like, she'll say, you're going to be Nanny to me, and I have to be Nanny. That's quite an interesting one, but you know, and then we sort of me and my wife Nina, we sort of try and think of things that that person would say and try and do little things. But like, you just don't always want it when you wake up at sort of, you know, 6:30, 7. It's like she'll just immediately want to go straight into that role play, and she'll be like, it's pretty disorienting, and you're just like, it's not. Could we just not do that this morning? It'd be fine.
I just want to be me.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to be me this morning. Is it all right? Would that be all right?
And Daddy likes a nice big gin when he wakes up at 8.
Very telling though, Mark. Be when you get home, gin when you wake up.
Granny, one thing about, you know, if I'm going to be Granny, we need to play it right. And Granny always pours herself a massive vodka at 6 a.m. Yeah, it's terrible. But you know, you've asked me to be Granny, so let's be Granny. I don't drink 24 hours a day, Benji. I'm putting a terrible picture of myself. But yeah,
you do whatever. It's up to you.
I know. No, there's no judging. I feel like I'm being interviewed.
That's right. You're not under caution. You'll be okay.
No, absolutely. Yeah. He's not gone out yet.
All right. Let's talk about Tad then. It was a real sort of hit with our subscribers, Benji. Really, really good book. Just wondering what sort of the inspiration behind it. Where did you come up with the idea?
So Tad sort of started. I kind of like most of my stuff. There's always I think what you do, you know, you have your there you go.
Activity. Well, it's funny. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I didn't know whose that was. I was even looking over my shoulder, thinking, "Oh no."
I don't know. It's a little. Well, my wife is up there. So. We'll see if I might just have to go.
That's fine.
Yeah,
no problem.
We crack on.
Honestly, it's caught wind of the fact that I'm down here on talking.
So, oh, really?
She's like, because she's just having bedtime now, so she's just like,
oh, you're too interesting.
So now she's crying because she wants to be down here. But she thinks there's some book she wants that's down here that isn't here. So anyway,
I thought it was great actually.
Real life happening.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was fantastic.
So where were we? Tad. Yeah. So Tad. I've actually got a copy of it here. So because obviously need to familiarise myself with it. This image, which I'll show you, which this image, basically, I started. There was this image that I did of a frog looking at the moon with this pink sky, and that was probably about 9 years ago or something like that. And it was before. So my first picture book was a storm whale. That came out in 2013. And so it was even before that came out, I'd started then working on some new ideas for books, because I'd done sort of had my first book was going to be published, but the publisher was saying, what other things you think you're going to do next? Because, you kind of finished the work on the book that's about to come out, and then they're like, what are you going to work on next? So I've been playing around with a few ideas, and one of them was this frog. And I sort of thought this frog sitting on a leaf looking at the moon and whatever, and I thought, I need to write a story for that book. And so I'd kind of done these drawings. I can hear a bit of activity outside the door. It's a bit distracting.
Wait, it's just her eyes will keep rolling.
Once she sees who you're talking to, she'll lose complete interest.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
We're not interesting people.
So let me try and gather my thoughts. So I've been working on that, but trying to sort of like generate some ideas, new ideas for stories. And this one, it was about a frog, and I didn't know what the story was going to be. So I was kind of trying to work through some stuff with that, and it didn't really turn into anything. And I actually have found recently some kind of sketches and sort of storyboards that I made at the time. And I tried this story, and it just didn't really work as a picture book. I just couldn't make it work as a proper story idea. So I just sort of forgot about it for quite a while. And then probably, I don't know, maybe 4 years after that or something, I'd just been sketching some little tadpoles. I was sort of drawing tadpoles, and I had this one that I'd drawn, and sort of peeping out of the water. And I was just like, this could be this frog thing. And I was trying to relate it back to the frog and the tadpole and I always quite like that idea of a story, like something that was based in nature or science, like that it's a sort of sequence, like, so it's a bit like the Hungry Caterpillar, like it has a satisfying kind of like sequence to it. So I was thinking that would be quite cool if I could make it work within that. But then I wanted it to be like these kind of hot colors as well. So I wanted that to be, so then I thought, not trying to get too restricted by like, these sort of hot tropical colors, meaning that it had to be in a tropical country. It's kind of like, it doesn't really matter. Let's not worry. Because, I tend to do that sort of thing where I get a bit like, is that real? Is that the real? Is that how, would that type of frog grow like that in a pond, or, how does that happen? So, but then sort of have to stop myself from getting too bogged down with that detail. And I had this thing, and I was like, and I thought Tad was a frog. That was sort of like the sentence. I thought Tad was a frog. Well, that's not quite true. He was almost a frog. So this is how it was at that point. And I just thought it sounded like quite a good opener. I thought that's quite a good opener. And I don't know why that's like, because some stuff when you work on it, it takes you ages to sort of craft that thing into what it is going to be. But that sentence, it just came to me with this image of this tadpole poking its head above the water. And then I don't know if it was then or whether it was, but in that time period, then like this happens to me quite often. I'll be like, whenever you want to like work on something, it's the creative work, some of it like that writing, it's quite difficult to sit down and go, right, today I'm going to write a story idea. It's going to be an idea, and that's going to be a book. It's really, it's just, I don't know, I just haven't found that it really happens when you do that. It's more likely when you're doing other stuff that you might, and I tend to find there's like a thing where when it's quite quiet in the evening, maybe once Esther's gone to bed, no one around, I have my own thoughts for a few moments, and then I'll sort of come up with it. So, and I can't really remember, and this was actually pre-Esther when I wrote it, I suppose, so actually that's probably a bit misleading, but it was like that. It was sort of early evening, and I sat down, and I think it just sort of flowed. A lot of the story flowed, And I found that with other things I've written, where you kind of put these little things in place, like in your head through time. So you might have sketched stuff out, you might have thought of an idea or a sentence or a starting, like an opening line or whatever, and they all become like little ingredients. Yeah. And you're thinking, oh, how am I going to do that? Or you might not consciously be doing it, but I think there's some kind of like subconscious work going on in the background all the time. And then like with that, it just, yeah, the sort of, there's like the form of the story. It just sort of came together with that book, and I wrote it out. I wrote this idea out, and I would say it probably in an hour or something, I'd written this story, which felt fairly rounded. Obviously, then you've got to then go back to it. You've got to edit it. You've got to tweak it. You've got to change. And there's loads of processes after that. But the essential thing was like there. Whereas like just to compare it with things that I'd done before that. So the first one was the Storm Whale, and I wrote that I'd made a short film at uni. It was my because I studied animation. So it was like a 5-minute film, and it was that story. But then what I had to do was break it down when it came to, so I studied that. So what was that year? Was that 2002 when I graduated? So then so it was about 7 or 8 years after that I then was like, right, I really want to work on this thing as a book. And then so that, but what I had to do was I had to break that down from the film that I've made, look at the storyboards I've made for the film, because I'd never written it in the way that I now write. So then I had this thing, and then I had like a story, and then I had to work out how to squeeze that into a sort of, 12, 13 spreads or whatever, and get it into the book. And then it was a case of then sort of weaving the words between the images and sort of working it out that way. And there was I did a lot more working with my editor on that book, where, kind of sort of forming the whole story, because I had like a visual story and I knew what the story said, but I needed to put the right words with it to kind of convey what I was trying to say. So, and there were bits like in that book where I would have like, I wanted to do like a wordless spread, because I come from an animation background. It was quite, you don't have to have words all the time. A lot of it's visual storytelling. So I kind of wanted some of it to do that kind of, without any words. But then they would encourage me not to do that, because like as a parent reading a book, which at the end of the day, it's what most picture books are kind of, that's the market they're designed for. They're in the UK, especially, they're bedtime books, and you need to be able to sit there and read them. And you need like all sorts of people to be able to sit there and read them, who perhaps, then maybe not as visually literate or whatever. So, you really need to be able to sit there with words and be able to read those words and convey that story. It kind of has to sort of be a bit of a leveler, I think.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Probably meandered completely. I mean, you just asked me about Tad, now I've gone off.
No, that's all right.
No, that's all right.
It's good. It's interesting. But it's interesting because you obviously illustrate the books as well. So sometimes we just talk to obviously the writers, but the fact that you're doing both is always quite an interesting sort of thing for us, really. So what goes into it, whether the words come first or it is the striking image and things like that. So what was your favorite part of the book then in Tad? What was the sort of the best parts either to write or to create?
The best part, I mean, I love work when I'm working on it. I love that sort of inception stage, like when you have the idea. It really, I don't know, I suppose it's the freest moment probably in the whole book, because it's like, it can be really difficult, but I think that moment that you have, like those times where you write something quite free flow and it comes out and you kind of, where you're going with it, and you can see the structure of it, and it can really, that's sort of like the most exciting bit, because you're like, it's like that you're sort of at the kind of, the coalface of writing. And whereas, then when you're actually working on the artwork of the book, that can often be, for me anyway, that can get quite tedious, actually, which to be completely honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you've got so much to do and you have a deadline and you're trying to see the whole thing, and there's just so much of it to do, you know, when you haven't done any of it yet, and you're just like, there's just this, so you might have like an initial sort of burst of energy, and because it's a new thing, you've got a new palette and, you know, new characters and stuff, you're quite into it. And those first images can be quite satisfying because you have to sort of problem solve things and make it all work. And it's kind of like, but then once you've done that, then it's like, it's then everything becomes much more sort of funneled in and restricted as you get towards the end, because everything then has to follow that, the brief of what you've already started.
Yeah.
You know? So you might, you know, and when you come to the end of it, you know, then yeah, obviously everything has to be exact. So I kind of enjoy that first part of the process more. But that's not, I mean, that's not talking about like a specific image in there, but I'd say like, and because I don't always work on it, like I wouldn't work on it like page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, you know, I'd kind of, you know, probably cherry pick the bits that I want to do first, which probably makes it worse for yourself, because then the bits that you want to do least, you've got all that to finish, you know.
Yeah. Eat the frog, as they say, no pun intended. Do the worst bits first.
Yeah, that's what you should do. That's what you should do.
Absolutely, yeah. Do the bits you're not looking forward to, and then the rest will be a piece of cake.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask whether it was what was your preferred bit? Was it writing or was it illustrating? But you've just probably answered that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's tricky though, because I sort of see, so the writing with this one was very much, you know, writing.
Yeah.
And then, so I kind of like then illustrated what I'd written, but often it's a lot more blurred than that. It's a lot more, you know, it's a much more crossover between the two things, and there's a lot more back and forth. Although it does lean towards the writing now. I think I found that it's quite, I don't know, it's quite satisfying to write stuff and sort of like I'm visualizing it, but the words that I'm getting down are kind of accompanying what's going on in my head, but I know that I don't need to be really specific and descriptive.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of an element of being able to sort of play with sentences that sound good, you know, the sort of the way, the rhythm of the words. And that's something that I've got into a lot more now than at the beginning. At the beginning, when I did the Storm Whale, as I said, I hadn't got that experience of doing that. So it was a lot more sort of staggered, I suppose, and tricky to get the words to flow.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I've sort of found more of a rhythm in my writing now.
Yeah. Yeah. As we were talking to a few other authors that obviously don't illustrate, and I think one of the questions we have was, when you write this book, you then have to hand it over some notes and say, you know, and then just wait to see what comes back. And actually the process apparently is so disjointed between the illustrator and the writer. In some cases they haven't even seen each other. And I just feel that actually doing both must be quite nice, because you can actually, you've got a vision in your head already. I mean, you'd already have the character already done from years ago, because you just had to fit it together. But it must be interesting not being able to illustrate your own work, because you must have in your mind have a clear picture of who looks like what, and you know.
Yeah, I guess that's it, isn't it? Yeah, writing stuff and then not illustrating it and sort of seeing what comes out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I get on with that.
No,
this sort of comes back to, so because I did because I studied animation, and it was all about writing for the film, you know, so it's like the sort of writing and directing a film.
Right. Okay.
So then when I came to do books, it was sort of it was similar for me in terms of a process, which was actually closer, I'd say, to what I'd wanted to do than illustrating for other authors.
Okay.
Because it's sort of like, and I find when I've illustrated for other authors, it's quite brief driven, because you're reading a text and that is your brief.
Yeah. I forgot you've been on the other end of that.
And so so I would sort of go to, you know, I'd sort of, I don't know, try and visualize something per the brief in a way in my head, whatever that brief was. And having worked in animation, I used to do quite a lot of pitching on commercials, and things would be really different from one job to the next. And so I was worked with, so you must know, so Jim Field, so who Oi Frog, illustrator of Oi Frog and books with Rachel Bright.
The line inside.
The Squirrels Who Squabbled.
Yeah.
etc. Okay, so Jim and I went to uni together, so we studied animation together, and then after uni we carried on doing a bit of work together, and then we directed. We were a directing duo. That's what we were represented as, and so we did loads of commercials and music videos and stuff like that together. And I'd say, pitched on like really wide-ranging commercials, and we did like a sort of year campaign for Sainsbury's. We even did stuff for Waterstones, which is quite strange now because obviously books are Waterstones, stuff like that. And then we sort of took a bit of a hiatus because we were both getting really busy doing our own things in children's books. And so but that, I mean, that's now like, what was that? It's like, that's probably like 9 years ago or something, 8 or 9 years ago. But not sure where I was going with that, but yeah, it was, so I've got, but just really enjoy doing picture books, really. I mean, that's sort of that, and I'd say that's quite close to animation, really. It's quite close to filmmaking in my mind, because they're sort of quite much more related in a way than illustrating a text for somebody else. That makes sense.
One sort of character that features in the book, and this is one of the reasons why I really like Tad, is Big Blub. The fact that there's quite a sort of a danger to the book, especially when you're reading it with your children. I always make a big fuss of when he first appears and things. My daughter really gets into it. So one of the activities that we've done. Oh no, I'm getting. Sorry about that.
All right.
It's kind of cool.
Hi, Mum.
Don't worry, it's fine. Everything's fine. It wasn't Big Blub. So what was I saying? Yeah, about Big Blubs. Yeah, so one of the activities that what we do is we create an activity book that goes along with the book, and we had the children imagine what Big Blub would be afraid of, and maybe he's got like a big brother that's even bigger than him, and it was designing sort of the rest of their family. I'm just wondering, what do you think they would be like if you have Big Blub's family? Do you think Tad would stand a chance against them? Could this be,
I don't know. Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that, because I'd sort of been tinkering. Well, I didn't really tinker. I say tinker. It like literally passed through my mind a few times. I was thinking, what if there was like another story in this? Because often I've done that with a book, and then I think, is there another book? Is there another book in this book? Is there another sort of story behind it? And I was thinking about the Big Blub origin story. Why did he end up being so nasty? What was his problem? And is he really that nasty? And it's one of those sort of things that I think, maybe the reality of making that book is something else. But I did think, who was he before? And I imagined, actually, I was trying to sort of make a bit of a mirror of the book, and have it that he was really small, and that he needed to have, maybe his brothers and sisters sort of had bigger mouths and bigger eyes, and, kind of like he needed to kind of catch up with them. So it's sort of a mirror of this story.
Yeah, no.
But then how that unfolds, how he kind of becomes who he is, but maybe not the best sort of bedtime author, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I need to explore it more. But I think you have to. There's always that sort of thing. You don't want the material in the book to be too kind of sort of scary. And in Tad, it was like the idea of having a sort of a nemesis, which I quite liked. That it's the opposite of the main character. So this being very small, and I did that with the colors as well. Like the color of Tad's very dark and black, in fact, on the page, surrounded by color, and then but then Big Blub is like a sort of is surrounded by darkness, and then but then they sort of share having like a yellow eye. So there's this sort of, these sort of opposite ends of a spectrum.
Oh, I didn't pick that up about this. About the eyes. I'll have to have
Yeah, because then all the other eyes are. So I've got it here. So she's the only one. She's the only one with a yellow eye. Where's the? I can't see it. But yeah, I did all of the. They've all got orange or blue, or purple, and then
she's
yellow.
Oh.
And it was just to kind of get a bit of a identity, I suppose, because quite hard when there's not many features.
Yeah.
Just a tadpole. And then I did like the bubbles, big blobs bubbles, sort of a yellow as well. So that was quite subtle though. That was quite a subtle thing. And then later in the book, they sort of bubble. They kind of bubble back up.
That's one of my favorite images when she's hiding on her own.
Yeah, that was quite nice and easy to illustrate. That.
Yeah, you love that one.
One of the last ones. Oh, I just got to get it finished. They're all hiding. Everyone's hiding. It's just a black page.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that was when you were saying about images that I did enjoy doing that one, because that was like the big sort of explosion of color at the end.
Yeah,
and I really looked forward to doing that one when that was coming up. Yeah.
So one of the other questions we like to ask is sort of the one book that sort of changed everything for you, whether that's in childhood, the one that sort of inspired you to get into books, or one that maybe that you came across and think, actually, I really want to write children's books now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have one that stands out for you?
I'd say, like, I think because I was doing animation, I was more like watching films and that kind of thing. So then I kind of didn't progress in that way. But when I was younger, like the one I always say to people is like The Tiger Who Came to Tea was like a massive memory, I suppose, like childhood memory of being read that book.
Yeah.
And actually, when I look at it now and I read it to Esther, and there's sort of stuff about the way it's drawn, even like some of it, where I'm like, I can sort of see how it's influenced me. I sort of tell how it's influenced me. I was really lucky, actually. I got to go to Judith Carr's house.
Really?
About must be a couple of years ago. And I was doing an event with her, which unfortunately I never did because she became unwell before she sadly passed away, which I think must be nearly 2 years ago now, I suppose it is.
I remember. Yeah.
So it's a few months before that, and we were doing this event together in Oxford, the Oxford Literary Festival. But yeah, so I got invited to go around there, and I sat around at a house and chatted to her and stuff. So that was pretty amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book. Ava absolutely loves that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does. It's
yeah,
quite fun
I think
to read. I quite enjoy reading that, actually.
Yeah, no, I love reading it as well, and it's quite unusual in some ways. I think the end of it's quite unusual because it sort of feels ambiguous, but I don't know. It's always had a lot of power, though. I think that book, this kind of big tiger in the house, had a lot of energy to it, really, which is what I used to love about it.
Yeah, I eat all the sandwiches. I'd read it nice and quietly, and all of a sudden I'll drop the book and grab Ava right around the waist, and there's that big like, oh, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she absolutely dies laughing, and that's probably why my wife hates me, because I always get this is like bedtime, and I'm so. But yeah, no, great book, and you're honoured to have done that. It's a shame you couldn't actually do what you wanted to together.
No, it was a shame. It was a real shame. But as I say, meeting her though, and sort of sitting there with her and having a chat and a cup of tea in her lounge was pretty special. So
absolutely. Yeah, blessed.
Okay, so we sort of touched upon it anyway. Just then, we'll talk about sort of reading with children. Do you have sort of any top tips or advice? That's something we always like to pass on to sort of parents. Take out a subscription with us, anything that sort of works around bedtime or gets your daughter engaged in books.
I think the thing that I not so much bedtime, but when we first had Esther, I was really keen to like not separate the books and the toys.
Okay.
Because I sort of felt like, they all need to be the same in the same thing. So we had like a sort of toy trunk, and we just had everything in there, like all kind of sloshing around, like all the board books and all the stuff. I wanted it to be really feel like it was, that they were there to be played with. And I'm sure she would have done that anyway, because small children do that, don't they, anyway? But it's just like, I don't know, there was just something, I thought there was a connection between those two things. It was quite important to make sure it was seen as like not seen as other, or kind of like, something that only the parents or the grandparents sort of brought and opened, that they were there to be
like
chewed and, licked and whatever else.
Having pages ripped out and things pulled.
But it's quite, I'll tell you what I found really difficult is the whole thing of books. Being an adult who like creates picture books and also loves other people's work and picture books, and having collected and sort of got all the nice ones and all that, then to sort of like let go of that and not be precious,
destroyed in front of
you, just be let don't touch the pages, don't touch it.
Let's look at the page. Do you realize something else?
I'll just hold it over here, and you look at, you have to, you obviously but you get past that quite quickly. But it definitely, I was like, felt odd to, don't want to. I'm the sort of person who doesn't crack a spine on a book. I'm like, it's just like this thing.
I'm the same. A was completely different. She'll open it and then more or less sit on it and crack it open. So
I definitely feel like the odd one out now. I mean, I definitely do that.
It's sacrilege. My first job is in print. So we see all these nice pristine books and catalogues and everything come out of our factory, and they always look lovely, and you think, oh, this looks stunning, and it sits nice and flat, and then literally 5 minutes in the hands of a 3-year-old and the book doesn't shut anymore and everything, you think, oh god, it's horrendous. So I'm with you on that, but I say it's like when you get a brand new phone. You drop it the once, and then all the shine comes off it. You think, oh well, it's damaged now. Just enjoy it. We've all been there.
2 days. That's what it lasted.
Fall out your top pocket when you get out of the car and it's smashed. And you think, oh well, I've got this for another 18 months. We might as well enjoy it.
All right. I think it's time for our most serious question, then, Benji, that we have, and that is, who is your favourite Disney princess?
Right. I'm not trying to get away from this question. I'm just going to press pause because I've totally done the schoolboy error of not making sure this is plugged into the electricity.
Oh, that's right.
I'm going to lose you if I don't plug it in. But it's fine because it is here.
I was really hoping you were going to go off camera and come back on dressed as Elsa from Frozen.
Favorite Disney princess? Oh no! Oh god! Right, okay. It's such a weird thing. I mean, I know why you've asked this question because it, the thing is, having a daughter as well. Like before she'd got any kind of palate or taste about anything, we sort of thought if we just present all the spectrum, it will all be fine. But of course it isn't, because they just gravitate towards that stuff. And then we discuss it like, is it nursery? Is it anybody in the family? Who sort of brings all that stuff? Where you sort of think you're going to kind of have this more balanced kind of, range of stuff, and then they love, whatever they're presented with, I suppose. But favorite Disney princess. I really never thought about this, guys. Thanks.
That's the question of the night.
I mean, the Little Mermaid I liked the Little Mermaid when it came out because I was probably about 11 or something, and went to the cinema to see it. So I'm gonna go with Ariel.
Good choice.
That's my choice.
Sound
It's different
choice.
from Snow White. We've had a lot of Snow
We
White.
had a lot of Snow Whites. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have.
That's good.
Yeah, no, I like that. We could,
Good.
to be fair, the backup question, if you really were stumped, was favourite superhero, but it was quite nice watching you squirm and go and get your charger to buy yourself some time.
Well, that's it. It came from an earlier podcast where we asked, what's the strangest question you've been asked during any kind of book event? And that was the leading one that kind of caught them off guard, shortly followed by, when are you going to stop writing?
Oh, right. Wow.
So we avoid that one because it only
silence.
sounds adorable from a child. If I was to ask it, it sounds completely different.
Kids are
Do you want me to answer that one as well?
No, you're okay. You're okay.
No.
Interestingly, we did
No.
ask it as part of the same kind of Disney princess, and the author was also asked this of another author, and they went, "I'm not really quite sure if I'm going to write another book." It's like, oh, nowish then. Okay, fine, fair enough. Yeah, carry on. It was only a joke.
Kids are.
Yeah, we're very sensitive people. Yes.
Yeah, savage. Kids are savage. I think they asked what car do you drive, how much money do you earn, and all that as well. The Disney princess. It's just such a random. We just it tickled us, that question, and we thought we've literally including it in every single.
It's a good one.
Done.
It's a good one.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't know why we don't ask it first, just to really throw things out. So literally, they're so uncomfortable then for the rest.
The
of
icebreaker. Yeah.
Yeah. But it does get everyone laughing because it's such a bizarre question.
I think it sets if we were to start with it, I think it would set the tone completely differently.
Yeah.
I think I'm not sure it would work, but you can give it a go if you like.
I might turn up to the next one actually dressed as Elsa or something.
That would definitely change the tone.
I think that'd be great.
So,
or maybe the Ariel now, I think.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Little Mermaid. Yeah.
Perfect.
Can't see past the camera because I've got this nice all-in-one fin suit down here. It's great.
Yeah.
Sat in a paddling pool in my land.
I was just literally about to say that.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Benji, have you done many sort of school events? Have you had sort of times when you're speaking to a group of children, have they ever asked you anything bizarre or anything?
You know what? I cannot think, but yeah, I've done quite a lot of school events over the past few years. Always, I think I mean it's one of those things that before you start writing children's books, you don't think you will be, it's not a thing I ever expected to do, but it's, and I did find it quite a challenge to start with, sort of standing up in front of a, room full of kids, and, any people, adults, public speaking is quite tricky. But yeah, kind of got into it as I've gone along. And it is always really exhilarating actually when you do it, especially like I always find the bigger the crowd that you do it to, like, the more exciting it is afterwards, because you feel like, oh my, sort of like the closest you get to being a rock star. 500 screaming 6-year-olds in a theatre something is quite intense.
That sounds like a nightmare to me. Absolutely a nightmare.
You see, when you do, and if you have so to use like a visualizer, do some drawing or something, that can be quite good fun, because you get a really, really good response, and you get a bit of audience participation. So, they're all shouting stuff out, and and you can surprise them with what you're drawing and doing stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What's the most surprising thing you've ever chucked into a drawing then, but just to throw them off, or just to?
I've done these ones where we sort of do like a dog drawing, and then we'll kind of get them to suggest different things like spotty, big nose, long, whatever it is, shaggy fur, something like that, and then you kind of like build it up into this thing. It's quite a cool thing to do. And then a lot of the time I do I'll just do stuff from my books where I build up the characters. So I'll sort of start with things and build them up from like, a nose to sort of eyes, and then gradually build up like a scene from one of the books.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that does sound cool.
Do you have you ever had it then when you've done something in school? Say you've had all those people check out those ideas to you, right? Make it spotty, make it scruffy, or whatever. Have you ever had sort of a character created that way and go, actually, that looks quite cool. I'm going to use that.
I haven't actually.
No. I'm going to leave that.
For copyright purposes, Aaron, he can't accept any kind of that's
true,
never happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I've never done that. It's quite, the thing is, there's this element of like where, it's obviously a bit of an ego rub, because there are all these kids are sort of, it's great, you create a drawing, and you're like, yeah.
It's easy.
But the thing is, you've drawn a lot of those things so many times, that it looks really fluid and easy, but kind of you've done it 50 times, so it's kind of
Yeah.
So one of the sort of questions we like to finish the podcast with is sort of, what's your biggest parenting fail? Something with your daughter where you just got that wrong, and it's you have anything. maybe you're just too good.
Isn't that just every day?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty tough, isn't it? Like, I think before we had a child, we were like, we had no idea. People sort of say to you, oh, you'll need to do this or you need to do that, and at the time when you haven't had a child, you're sort of like, yeah, we'll work it out. It's fine, But the reality is that all that stuff is pretty intense. So
it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
It's
First night.
First night, I was asleep the first night because I've been awake for the previous 3. I think there was a moment where I just went to sleep and that I couldn't be woken.
Really?
Yeah. That first night, that was the first sleep I'd had in like 3 days. First night at home.
Honestly, most terrifying night of my life.
Best night's sleep I've ever had, because I was completely unconscious. I'm normally quite a light sleeper. I was not that night.
Really?
And every night since, yeah.
You swaddle them up and you look at them and you think, are they breathing? Are they breathing? And you look at them and she's not moving, and you think she's so quiet. And look, they literally give you this little thing to bring home and say, right, over to you guys. So you can read every book on it, or you can watch every YouTube video under the sun. But when you first have that little one at the foot of your bed in their little crib or whatever, it's just terrifying. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I slept for like 2 weeks. Just literally catnapping the whole time. Any little squeak, like, upright, like a meerkat.
There's also some quite fun parenting fails as well, where you're doing wrong and you'll pay for it later. For example, last night, Dougie had a new toy and I wanted him to play with it. So bedtime was extended by about 2 hours because it was a Playmobil DeLorean, because I love Back to the Future.
Oh, amazing.
There you go.
So I'm waiting for Bobby to get old enough to give it to him.
You see, at 2, if I take some of the bits off, it's absolutely fine, and he loves playing with it and so on. And so I thought, I know I'm going to pay for this, and the fact that it'd be quite exciting, and it won't just be 5 minutes playing with it. This is going to be a while. So I both consider that a fail, and while simultaneously I knew what I was doing at the beginning of it. I knew bedtime would be extended. I knew I was ruining the entire sleep schedule because I wanted to play with a Playmobil toy at 6, 7 o'clock at night with my 2-year-old. But I enjoyed it, damn it. and he did too. Eventually, he fell asleep, rolling it backwards and forwards in front of him, making car noises. So I take the victory on that one. But at the same time, I did lose quite a bit of my evening when I probably didn't have to. And you could have played with it today. It would have been exactly the same.
Yeah, no, I love kids' toys. They're brilliant. I absolutely love kids' toys. Now Ava's into Barbies and stuff, and it's not quite the same. I still enjoy like interacting with her, but so I had to put on the kid's voice, the Barbie's voice and stuff, and I think, oh, this is horrendous. So what I did is I bought a remote control Barbie car, which literally sits 2 Barbies in it, and I have great pleasure with it, firing that around the decking in the garden. So even girls' toys can be fun for dads. Have you got the similar situation with at home with yours or not? Barbies, princesses.
Barbies and things have just been introduced recently, and a sort of some like My Little Pony toys. That's the new thing.
Ah,
Yeah.
all those old toys are making a bit of a comeback, aren't they? Cycling them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting. But yeah, we've a big lover of books in this house, and actually as a kid, I wasn't massively into books. It's only later on in life you kind of rediscover it. And I'm actually really enjoying all the kids' books with her that and new books, obviously, that I didn't really spend a lot of time with growing up. So yeah, it's all pretty
it's
cool.
definitely, it's like I was saying about, you know, the sort of books that I would buy or would have bought, and then the books that we now read. You know, I think there is a difference, you know, and there's a difference because of like the ones that she will select, you know, to read night of night. And I'll be honest, the ones that she does pick are really enjoyable reads. Like, you know, she's sort of, they know what they like, you know, and then there'll be some, I'm obviously not going to mention any names, but there'll be some that she'll like, that then I'll be like, oh, like, we've got to read this again. I mean, you know, I like it. Well, I don't want to read. But then there's others that as I say, the good, like what I would consider, you know, really well written books, she does pick up on. I think, you know, they know you can't, you know, you can't put it stuff past them.
No.
Yeah, definitely.
No,
they're the toughest crowd, children.
Massively. Yeah, they don't hold back, do they?
No, definitely not.
Oh, great. Thanks so much for your time, mate. It's been really, really great talking to you and hearing all about what you're up to with your family and stuff. It's been really cool.
Benji.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
you're welcome. Thanks very much for asking me.
Yeah, I'll catch you soon. Take care.
Take care, Benji. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.